In the previous tutorial, I showed you how to prepare the takeoff items for the PMDG 737. In today's video, we're gonna see how to fly the takeoff. And before I get started, please show your support to this channel by subscribing, liking and sharing. From startup to shutdown is all about flying with simulators. To initiate the takeoff, first push the clock button to start the timer. Then without delay, move the thrust levers to approximately 40% N1. And we want to see a symmetrical thrust increase. Once the N1s are stabilized, we can engage the toga mode. Now for better accommodation, PMDG is giving us a click spot for toga activation just below the course selector knob, as you can see here. So if you like this method, you can just click here to engage the toga mode. Otherwise, if you are like me, who likes to use the more realistic way, there is two toga push buttons on the thrust levers. You can use either one to engage the toga mode. For instance, I'm gonna push the left toga button to start the takeoff. Then glance at flight mode annunciator to confirm that N1 heading select and toga are selected. Then maintain a visual contact with the runway to keep the airplane centered. And don't forget to leave your hand on thrust levers. And we do this for two reasons. The first one, we may need to readjust the thrust if it's not set correctly by the auto throttle, or we may need to abort the takeoff if something went wrong. At 60 knots, we want to see the pitch bar starts moving up to 15 degrees. At 80 knots, the auto throttle mode changes from N1 to thrust hold. In this mode, the power is removed from the auto throttle, allowing us to have a manual control on the thrust levers. So it's the appropriate time to glance at the actual N1s to ensure that the takeoff thrust is set. At this point, just keep your eyes on the runway and be prepared to hear synthetic voice for V1 followed by rotate. When you hear V1, remove your hand from thrust levers. When you hear rotate, gently apply a steady pull back on the yoke to initiate the rotation. To prevent an over-rotation which can lead to tail strike, care should be taken to limit the rotation to 10 degrees max. At liftoff, you can start adjusting your pitch to follow the pitch bar guidance. Glance at vertical speed and altimeter indicators to confirm a positive rate of climb, then gear up. If LNAV or VNAV are not being armed, which is the case as shown on my FMA arm section, here you cannot engage neither LNAV nor VNAV below 400 radio altitude. At 400 radio altitude, I'll select the rule mode that comply with the departure procedure. For instance, I'll select LNAV. Then I follow up with VNAV mode selection to let the FMC manage my vertical profile. Since I'm a single pilot and the autopilot can be engaged at 500 radio altitude, I will engage the autopilot by selecting Command A. Then I want to see that the autopilot flight director system annunciator changing from FD to command, confirming that the autopilot is on. And I glance at my flight mode annunciator to check that N1, LNAV and VNAV speed are engaged. A thrust reduction altitude, which can be found in Takeoff Ref page 2 under reduction title, as you can see here, For instance, it's 1000 AGL. For instance, at 1000 AGL, I want to see thrust mode annunciator changing from takeoff to climb N1 limit. At the acceleration altitude, which can be found on our CDO takeoff ref page 2, as you can see here. And for instance, it's 2000 AGL. So at 2000 AGL or radio altitude, which is for instance my acceleration altitude, VNAV mode will command 230 speed target. In this initial acceleration phase, we need to follow up with the flaps retraction as scheduled on the speed tape. To initiate the first flaps retraction, check that the airspeed trend or the green arrow is pointing up to confirm the acceleration and the current speed is above the white box, which it is. Then I select flaps 1. When the speed is at flaps 1 maneuvering speed with a positive speed trend, I select flaps up. Now it's the appropriate time to complete the after takeoff items, starting with the gear selector goes to off, auto brake off. The start switches are applicable to the current weather conditions. For instance, I don't need them, so I turn them off. Then for the pressurization, I check the bleed air panel is set. Finally, we can complete the after takeoff checklist. And this concludes the takeoff tutorials. That's all for today. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.